Hello, my name is Mark LeBlanc, and I serve as the chairman of Indie Books International. Thank you for joining us for the Marketing with a Book podcast. At Indie Books International, we have a rather unique philosophy when it comes to publishing, and that is it's less about the book and more about what the book will lead to. You know, so often you will hear people say, you know, you're a pretty sharp guy or you're a pretty sharp gal. You know what you should do? You should write a book. Well, so many of us have heard that over the course of time. However, our approach is you should not write a book, that your focus should be on writing the right book and making sure that you have the right title, the right subtitle, the right structured table of contents, and that your book is designed not necessarily to sell maybe more books in onesies or twosies, or in the hopes that people would find you, that strangers on the internet would find you online and order your book, but that the book would be used or better used as a marketing tool, that it would help you find or land more $3,000 coaching assignments or $5,000 workshops or $15,000 retreats or $50,000 consulting assignments. You know, it's pretty challenging today to get the ROI that you dream about on a $20 or a $10 book. But the ROI can be amazing if you write the right book, and it's a gateway or pathway to more of the good work that you feel called and compelled to do. Well, every Tuesday, Henry DeVries and I lead a podcast. He's usually in the driver's seat or the pilot seat, and I'm the co-pilot. But today, I happen to be in the pilot's seat. So thank you for joining me today. Our conversation or our focus for today is on the value of mentoring. And I'm excited about this because quite frankly, I've had a number of mentors along the way, people that have, people who saw something in me at an early age and at times put their arm around me and guided me, steered me, were a bit of a rudder for my ship. And part of my philosophy over the course of time has been no one accomplishes anything great alone. And when you think about your clients and your audiences and your approach and your philosophy, a lot of people come in and out of our world, but the value of a mentor is possibly second to none. It was just a few months ago when I was called as an expert witness in a case. I was in a deposition. I had five somewhat high-powered attorneys grilling me. I was called to represent a client of mine or testify or conduct a deposition on my client's behalf for lost wages in his consulting business. And one of the questions that was posed to me was about the value of myself as a coach and my approach and philosophy and my background and credibility. And one of the questions led me to an answer, and the answer was, well, quite frankly, you need to understand the difference between the role of a coach, the role of a consultant, the role of a counselor, and the role of a mentor. And a little bit later on in the deposition, an attorney and another attorney said to me, you know, Mark, I was sort of struck by your answer to an early question. Is it possible that you might circle back to that answer on the difference between a mentor, a coach, a consultant, and a counselor? And he said, can you give a simple definition of each one? And I said, well, for sure. I said a consultant is someone who has 20 questions, but if you don't have the answers, they have a quiver of about 40 answers ready to give you. A pure coach has 20 questions and no answers. True coaching is often about guiding a client to help them discover the answers on their own. A counselor is someone who obviously is licensed to get into some of the therapeutic aspects of growth and development. But a mentor is that sort of often unpaid guide or Sherpa, or at times simply a rudder for someone's ship. And I'd love to open up a dialogue or a conversation with those of you that are willing to share. And rather than just simply introducing yourself, as we often do on our weekly podcast, I do want you, each of you, to introduce yourself, your name, where you are from, the title of your current book or the next book that you are working on. Rattle off the 3 answers to those questions. But what I really want to hear, and I'm willing to give you a little bit more time for each of you, I want you to describe an experience that you have had with a mentor, whether recent or many years ago. But here's the litmus test, or what I'm hoping for, because there's a difference between a mentor at some point in your life giving you a piece of advice and you simply taking that in as good advice. There's a difference between that and a piece of advice that changed the course of your life or your work. And I will start. My name is Mark LeBlanc. I'm out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. My first book was published about 21 years ago, titled Growing Your Business. I will never forget Bob Erickson out of Malacca, Minnesota. He was a high school teacher in Malacca, and I happened to meet him at a youth retreat program for teenagers. And I got to know Bob over the course of the weekend. And as a teacher, he took a bit of a liking to me. I had given about a 10-minute talk on this faith-based retreat, and he admired what I had to say, and we struck up a conversation. It would eventually lead to a mentor-mentee relationship, somewhat informal. But in addition to being a teacher in the local high school in Malacca, Minnesota, he also owned a Dairy Queen franchise. And it happened to be one of the most successful Dairy Queens system-wide in the whole franchise organization. One of the most successful of that type or that level of Dairy Queen location. And I'll never forget, one day I was to meet him about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I would be driving from St. Cloud, Minnesota over to Malacca, if I remember right, about 30 or so miles. I was about 18 years old. And I don't know what I was doing on that particular day, fooling around with my girlfriend or whatever I was doing, but I was running late. And I think there was maybe one more kiss to be had, or one more hug to be had. I don't remember. But I kept saying, I've got this 4 o'clock meeting in Malacca, Minnesota, and I need to be on my way. And so I finally got on my way, and I watched the clock, got a little nervous, and noticed that it would be about 4:20 before I would arrive at his office in the back of the Dairy Queen. And I walked in at 4:20, remember, 18 years old, supposedly this sharp young kid. And I walk in, and I proceeded to get the tongue lashing of the century, maybe of my entire life. But the interesting thing that Bob said to me was, he said, Mark, it's not the fact that you were late. It's the fact that you knew you were going to be late and you didn't stop. It would have cost you a dime to stop and get to a payphone and just ring me up and say, Bob, something has prevented me from being able to be there at 4 o'clock. I expect that I will be there at approximately 4:20. And I would have been just fine. In the throes of running my business, who among us have not tried to answer one more email or do one more task or make one more call before we get on the road? And of course, we're not on the road as much as we are in the last 12 months during COVID. But how many of us cut it too close? Well, because of that tongue lashing and that lesson from my mentor, Bob Erickson, it became a standard of mine. And for those of you that know me, know that timeliness is incredibly important to me. It is one of my standards. And I'll never forget when somebody said to me at one of my Achiever Circle retreat weekends, because I start on the clock and end on the button, almost without fail. And one day he said to me, or a participant said, you know, Mark, I learned a line, or I got a line that you can use if you want. He goes, it's not mine. But as the line goes, if you're early, you are on time. If you are on time, you are late. If you are late, don't even bother showing up. And I never forgot that. And especially during COVID, I will tell you that as I host and conduct a weekly, what we call our Team LeBlanc weekly conference call for my active coaching clients, people know that the expectation is that they will be early or run the risk of being left in the waiting room. And almost every week, not so much anymore, because almost everyone has been left in the waiting room at least once, and it never happens again. I feel that timeliness is a signal or a sign of respect. And I thank Bob Erickson, my mentor of so many years ago, for not only taking it upon himself to impress upon me at 18 how important timeliness was and how it is a signal and a sign of respect, but how that has changed the course of how I navigate and operate in my world. Thank you for listening to me and being incredibly present. I would love to pass the talking stick around the world for those of you that are with us. I'd love to hear first from David, and then Chris, and then John. David, take it away.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for asking. I'm David Goldman, and I am in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I wrote a book called The Road to Happiness: How to Get What You Really Want. And I've had lots of different kinds of relationships. Counselor, certainly, yes. Coaching, yes. In fact, Mark is my coach. Consultant, absolutely. Mentor, I go back to thinking about when I first got back to Pittsburgh after I was in college. Thursdays were my favorite days because there was a Thursday lunch group that would meet in downtown Pittsburgh. My father, who was a salesperson, was always in downtown on Thursdays, and I would meet him for lunch, and we were the bookends. I was the youngest person in the group. He was the oldest person in the group. And in between, there were three guys who were much closer to my father's age. So I was by far the youngest guy in the group. Unfortunately, it took me a while to understand that I was the least intelligent person in the group, but I soon found out. And there was one guy in particular who was a friend of my dad's stockbroker, who was also in the group. But this guy, his nickname was Buddy, and he was just one of those unforgettable characters. And the most amazing thing about him was that he was very wealthy. He was he was in the junk paper business, and he was incredibly wealthy and remained liberal his entire life. He remained politically liberal, being a multimillionaire. You don't see too many multimillionaires who remain politically liberal. And that always impressed me. But he was an amazing, amazing guy. And I got to be good friends with him. And he was a mentor in many ways. But I'm going to tell you a really interesting little piece where he mentored me. Interesting, at least to me. So being much younger, when I was about 40, I asked the group, and everybody in the group was at least 65 at that point. So, and this guy was probably 75. And I asked the whole group, what would you tell your 40-year-old self today that you just didn't know back then? And every single person answered that question: take better care of your teeth. And I found it to be such an interesting answer, such a crazy answer. And yet I took it to heart, and I started to study about it because, first of all, I never liked my smile. I used to have a crooked front tooth, and I never liked my smile. And my parents never did what was necessary to correct it. So didn't wear braces when I was a kid, all of that, blah, 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 blah in the past. But Buddy said to me, if you ought to smile more. And I said, well, I do smile. And he said, smiling with your eyes isn't smiling. You got to show your teeth. That's what a smile is. And I said, oh, well, I don't like my teeth. And he said, well, then get them fixed. The excuse that your parents didn't get them fixed. You're 40 years old. Fix them yourself. So I said, whoa, interesting. And I did. And then I started to study little things like flossing, like what your dentist tells you is right. Flossing every day really does work. And then I read a study where if you floss twice a day, it's more than twice as good as flossing once a day. But that's it. Flossing 3 times a day doesn't do more than flossing twice a day, but flossing twice a day is better. And so ever since then, I've taken incredibly good care of my teeth. Doesn't mean I don't have cavities, doesn't mean I don't have a couple of crowns, but it was just incredible advice. And the most important part of the advice was a smile is the most important thing you can wear, and it costs nothing. Well, in my case, it cost a little bit because I had to fix my teeth, but you get the point. I mean, the smile is a really important thing, and it never fails that if I give somebody a smile, I always get one back. So it's a contagious thing. So I thank Buddy for that, and I don't know that I'd be the happy guy that I am today without him.
Thank you so much, David. I appreciate that. I love that. A smile is the most important thing you can wear. Chris and then John.
Okay, so my mentor, her name was Jane Lobdell. Her name still is Jane Lobdell. I don't know if she still works at MasterCard, but what she taught me was one of the most painful experiences of my life. And she taught me because I did it. So let me explain. I was in the MasterCard headquarters as a consultant, and it was a very exciting assignment. Lots of money, lots of great value we were giving to the company. And I was really super excited. I was excited for what I was doing, for my job, my this, my that. And I walked down the hall, and as I walked down the hall, I looked into a glass office, and I saw this on the wall. I don't know how clearly you can see that because I've got a big light on, but it is an infographic. Maybe you can see it like that. It's an infographic from MasterCard. And it's probably one of the most informative infographics I've ever seen. It was this huge thing on the wall. And it explained the way all of the money flows in a credit card system, which I never understood. And this graphic, it was just brilliant. So I knocked on the glass door. There were two people sitting on a couch inside. And they knocked on the glass door with this almost puppy-like enthusiasm about this infographic. I was so excited about the job, so excited. And they kind of looked up, and they didn't wave me off, but they didn't exactly welcome me in. But I opened the door anyway. And I said, "That's the most amazing infographic," or something like that. Where can I get that? And they both looked at me in a way that I knew whatever, it was wrong. So anyway, I could see that they didn't engage, so I closed the door and I left. The next day, Jane Lobdell, my client, calls me, and she says, "Did you burst into an office door in the middle of someone being terminated?" And that's what I found out. The other person on the couch was being fired. And I, as a consultant, stuck my stupid, over-enthusiastic puppy head in the door and said something completely insensitive, completely no recognition whatsoever of the surroundings and the other people. So Jane didn't have to say much, but we talked briefly. And the big realization and the big mentorship that I took from her she didn't have to call me, right? She could have just said, "That's some nutso consultant we had," right? But she called me. And what it taught me, and it doesn't mean I do it all the time, and it doesn't mean I do it perfectly, but to be a hell of a lot more aware of what other people are potentially going through and feeling. Right? And not just get so tangled up in whatever you're solving a problem, or you're this or you're that, whatever you're doing, right? Big lesson. I have to admit, I have not done anything like that since. So I thank Jane Lobdell for giving me an awareness of just how inside my own head, my own world I was being, and the potential impact on that poor person on the couch being terminated. That's my story.
Thank you, Chris, and I appreciate that. And you were so excited to share your story. I'm not sure we caught your name and your book title.
That would be helpful. My name is Chris Hodges. I live in Denver, Colorado. My book title, which changed recently, is called Your Noble Robot. And it is about using intelligent technologies to profit and retain your top talent. And thank you, Mark, for that opportunity for a plug. I don't have the cover yet.
And when will the book be in hand? What's the estimated target date?
I would hope in June.
Great. Well, I'll look forward to ordering your book. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
John, and then Joe, and then Brad.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Lockhorst. And so I don't forget, I'm putting the book up there right now, Mission Critical Leadership. And this book is so fresh off the press, it is still warm in my hands, just delivered on Sunday. So really excited, getting ready for launch the last week of April, doing all the ramping up. And Mark was a big part of that story. And Mark, the one thing you didn't tell me was how fun it is to sign the book for people when you send it out. I'm just having a ball signing these books to send out to my launch team and people that have endorsed it. And so anyway, just having a blast with that. I am located in the Minneapolis area, about 20 miles straight north of Mark LeBlanc, so in the same neighborhood. And I think, for me, the mentor seems to show up just at the right time when there is a turning point in life, whether that's personal or professional, or perhaps it could be that those are the points in life where you actually seek that person out. And the one story that stands out for me, as I heard your question, Mark, earlier, when I was in my mid-20s, my first career, which was a CPA, practicing in a small accounting practice here in Minneapolis, wondering where I was going in that career and what was it going to look like. And I was just experienced enough that I was starting to get calls from headhunters asking me if I would be interested in jumping ship, moving to another firm. And of course, they can dangle the opportunity in front of you and make it sound, really good. And there was one in particular that had a potential opportunity for me that sounded really, really good. And I heard what they were saying, and I thought, you know what, that is the opportunity that's going to put me right down the path that I want to go in this CPA career. I think I should go that route. And there was something inside of me that just didn't feel quite right about giving that quick answer without getting some counsel. And so I sought out a guy that I knew who was in the industry, who knew me, also knew my then boss really well. And so I met with this guy and I explained the whole situation, and he looked at me and he says, "John, I'm not going to tell you which road to go down, but he said, I do have a piece of advice for you. You need to go and talk to Scott first." Scott, who was my then boss. "And you need to explain what's going on and why you're interested in this other opportunity, and just put it out there and see what his response is." And so I thought, okay. And I will tell you, I was quite nervous going into that meeting. And when I sat down and I explained what was going on, Scott looked back across the desk at me and his jaw just kind of dropped. And he said, "John, I'm really surprised to hear you say that. And boy, I'm so glad that you came and talked to me, because you're the guy that I've always envisioned taking over this firm someday when I retire. And you're the guy that I want to be my next partner in the firm. And I would hate to lose you. And while it might seem odd because I'm no longer practicing accounting, I'm not in that world anymore. So there's some other twists and turns that have come since then. But that turned out to be just an absolute monumental right decision to stay exactly where I was. And within about 3 years, become a partner in that firm. And even though I'm not in that industry anymore, I can tell you, I'm quite certain I would not be where I am today if I had jumped ship at that point. And so just perfect timing for that wise word from a mentor. And I'm forever grateful to him.
Thank you, John, and congratulations on your book. Would you hold that up one more time?
Sure.
I will now look forward to ordering that book. I'll order it as soon as we get off this call. And
Right. Thank you, Mark.
I'm so thrilled. It's been quite a journey for you. I remember, having you in my office and exploring that. And it looks like a beautiful book cover. So I can hardly wait to read it. Congratulations. And it is great signing it. Until you sign your 54,000th copy, then you might be like, gosh, Mark said it was, this isn't so much fun
I'd
anymore.
love to suffer through 54,000 copies, Mark.
Wouldn't that be great? Yeah, well, congratulations on a job well done. Joe, you're up, and then Brad's on deck.
Thanks, Mark. My name is Joe Paolo. I'm an East Sider. I'm the Shoreview, Minnesota. So another Minnesota here guy. The title of my book is How to Sell Nothing, which is what I'm holding up. I don't have a title yet, or the actual book yet, still in the early stages. But basically it's about a logical way to make the emotional sale. My mentor is an individual named Spencer Hayes. He was a chairman of the board of a company called Southwestern Company, and that's what I went through in college, where I sold books door to door. And I did that and recruited and trained students for 6 years. And Spencer taught me a lot of things. I could talk for 2 hours of things that he talked about, but there's 2 things that he helped me with that I strive to take to all of my coaching clients, or try to fulfill that. And when we're coaching with people, or even trying to mentor them, helping people figure out what they want is important. And helping people write it down is really important. But we're missing the biggest thing. It's why they want it. If their why is strong enough, the what and how don't matter. And Spencer put that in my head, and it worked. And he put it in the context of something that I still try to live with. If I help enough people get what they want, I'll get what I want. And I think we've all heard that and we've done that. But the why attached to those 2 things, that's pretty powerful. If you help them get what they want and they know why, that's my leverage as a coach, to get them to change their behavior, to get them to change their activity, get them to change their goals. It's their why. So I really try to focus on that. Is their why. What they want is important, yes, but why they want it is extremely important. And it just kind of overflows in every aspect of my coaching, my interaction. The second thing he said is more of a technical thing, but it's been almost just as powerful. And maybe I think we all get to a point where we're starting to work with the top people in an organization. And for coaching, consulting, or doing a project, a lot of times there's ego. If they're a top producer, they know everything. And when I first started out, I kept running in and butting heads with people that had this. Yes, they had to do it, but to argue, and it's like, oh, it was just a pain in the butt to get them to be open-minded. And I remember back to Spencer said, you should give people permission to challenge you. And it's one of the things I do on my first phone call, where I set the tone for our entire relationship, whether it's a year or 6 years. I will say literally, you have permission to challenge me. If I'm saying something you don't agree with, you don't like it, you're not comfortable with it, let me know. It's the essence of what I do. And all of the conflict, it's gone away. Where these same high energy or high driver type people, they ask for my permission. Joe, what about this? And it just changed the whole tone. So 2 things: help people get what they want, you get what you want, but make sure you attach their why. And then the second part is give permission to challenge me. I give that out freely.
Hey, thank you, Joe. Thank you very much. I think we've got quite a contingent here from Minnesota. So good to have John here, and you too. Thank you so much. Brad, you're up, and then Suzanne is going to share.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Appreciate, Mark, the opportunity to talk here, and it was nice to hear what your thoughts were earlier. It's an important topic, mentorship. I've been open to mentors my entire life, but I haven't had a lot of them. I guess maybe I haven't sought them out or asked. You always have to make an ask of a mentor. Often they don't just show up and tap you on the shoulder. But my book here is this is a bit premature. I designed the cover. I had this concept in mind. I still have a long way to go on my book, but hoping to have it out this fall. It's called Sustainability Mind Shift, and the subtitle is Accelerating Business Leadership Impact and Results Before Time Runs Out. Happy to tell people about the book a little bit more detail later. But interestingly, as I said, I didn't have a lot of mentors, but one guy that was influential in my life and happened to touch me at a pivotal moment of my life was in college. I was interested in a lot of things. I'm always a curious guy. I'm an avid learner my entire life, and I happened to be taking a lot of different classes that interested me. Anthropology was one of them. I took a biology class. I loved political science, mostly the international political economy stuff, not so much the American government. So I went to my advisor. So he was really an advisor, you know, a student advisor, but served more as a mentor to me in throughout my college time period. And you know, I asked him, I said, I'm really confused because I'm interested in so many things, but I don't really know what to major in. And I sort of like pieces of each major, but I don't necessarily like the prerequisites that you have to do, particularly in political science. And I didn't know how to use anthropology. I didn't want to be my anthropology teacher. I'd see him come in with bags under his eyes, a big coffee, been up all night. And I'm like, yeah, it seems cool, but I don't know if I could do that. And he said, well, what are you really good at? And that was an interesting question. I said, well, I'm fluent in Spanish. I grew up in Spain for 2 years of my life as a child, and you know, took it through high school, and I'm writing. I'm basically fluent, getting A's. And he said, well, do that as your major. And I said, well, the Spanish major? I didn't really picture myself as a Spanish major. And what am I going to do with it? It's a language, but you know, how's it sort of what are the broader, you know, need something more applicable than that. And he said, it doesn't matter because you're an undergrad. I was going to school down south. He said, you're at a good school, get an A at an undergrad, a 4.0, and that's all that matters these days. Because if once you graduated and you decide what you really want to do, you can go to graduate school and specialize at that point. But you know, they're going to be looking at your grade point average, and so your first jobs and career in your career. And that actually led me to go to Costa Rica after I graduated, which introduced me to ecosystems thinking and sustainability, sustainable development, and really jump-started my career. So I have him to thank for that.
Thank you, Brad, and buen camino.
Thanks.
Suzanne and then Devin.
Mark, can you repeat the question again, please?
Your name, where you are, and a story of a mentoring moment.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Hagen. I am the Director of Promotions and also the producer at Indie Books International. I am from Escondido, California, a little bit out of San Diego. I have had several people in my life who have been a mentor. The first one, of course, has always been my mother. She's taught me something that has carried me through a lot of situations in my life. She's always told me the kind thing is always the right thing. So I try my best to always incorporate that. Even if I feel mad at someone or angry, I really work on shifting my thoughts to the kind thing to do for them. Another really great mentor is a very close friend of mine. Before I used to always say yes to everybody, I always wanted to help, which is a good thing. But now he explained to me that it's okay to say no. So now I do work on that as well. I will say no. It's actually empowering. It took a long time. Henry's really great with that. He always will say, you know, I wish I could, and that's what he tells me to say. So I've had really great people in my life. I've learned a lot. I really love working at Indie. I mean, I have you, Mark, I have Henry, and I have Devin, who have taught me so much already, especially in the work, but also in personal life. So I'm very grateful for that as well.
Thank you, Suzanne. And as long as you don't say no to a request from the chairman. All right, Devin, you're up.
Hi, Devin DeVries. I'm in Oceanside, California, and my upcoming book is Marketing with a Seminar. And I kind of consider I have like three major mentors in my career, Mark and Henry being, you know, the primary ones for the last decade. But my very first mentor when I started working in corporate America is named Corey Moores. And he was my first boss when I worked at ProFlowers. So this was my first experience in a large, working in a large kind of organization. And he taught me a lot about how to navigate that, how to work with people to get, the projects done when you were all trying to get the same limited amount of resources. He was great at the let's just go talk to them. Everybody else would be like emailing or calling, and he was like, let's just walk next door to their cubicle and get stuff done. So those were all good lessons. But I think the one big thing that he said that really stuck with me over the years was, especially when maybe something's not going quite the way you want it, or, various times there were like layoffs or things like that. He told us that you get to control your narrative and how you want to talk about how things are happening to you. And that a lot of people tend to focus on the negative, and they'll kind of go around and tell people all the bad things that are happening. But that's not really, it's not really attractive to other people. And they often aren't very motivated to help you if you're always focused on the negative. So he taught us how to kind of shift the message. You get to say it how you want, position it in a way that's positive, and really go from there. So I often think that, and eventually that narrative led me to Indie Books International and choosing this job and this career. So I'm very grateful for those lessons.
Thank you so much, Devin. And we are excited about your book. It is going to make a significant difference. And I can't wait till you start signing those. If each of you would be so kind, thank you so much for sharing your story and a mentoring moment. If each of you would be so kind to put the pearl of wisdom or the specific perspective in the chat box, we would appreciate it. And we'll pass that on to Henry, and who knows, it may end up being a future Forbes article. I'm not able to thank Bob Erickson. He passed away a number of years ago. I actually, just 2 weeks ago, I stopped in Malacca, Minnesota. Ann and I were driving through, and I stopped at the Dairy Queen because my recollection is that his son had taken over the Dairy Queen, and at some point it was transferred to another buyer. And so I've not been able to track down any of Bob's children, but I'm hoping to, because I'd love to share the story of the impact that he has had on me. And I would encourage each of you, if your mentor is still alive, that maybe you consider reaching out to him or her, and in letter or conversation, and sharing the impact that a moment had with you, or maybe their spouse, or maybe a son or a daughter. Acknowledgement is never out for the pro. And sometimes when we think something is significant, but as time goes on, a relationship can dwindle or be on idle or in neutral, or we blink and a year goes by. We take a long weekend and a decade goes by. So if there's an opportunity to circle back, I wrote a letter to the editor of our small town newspaper praising my speech teacher many years ago as I entered the field as a full-time professional speaker. So if you have an opportunity to do that, you will come to understand the power of what it means to circle back with somebody who's meant so much to you. I also would encourage you to think about, if you are not mentoring someone at this time, or if it has been some time since you felt like you were a mentor. A mentor-mentee relationship does not have to mean you meet with somebody every 30 days or that it needs to be so formal, but imagine the impact that you could have and the influence that you could have if you took notice of someone up and coming or emerging and had an opportunity to shape the way they think. I would love to go around the horn one more time and just briefly share, what do you think is the most important, or maybe one of the top attributes a good mentor will have? And again, I will lead the way. I think a mentor needs to have the degree of courage required to sometimes gently step on someone's toes. Now, I still hurt from the broken toe where Bob jumped up and down on my toe. But I think it takes a lot of courage to sometimes call somebody out when it has been needed. So to me, the attribute is courage. I'm going to go in reverse order, Devin, and then Suzanne.
I would say empathy. I think it's being able to give advice, but in a kind way, and understanding kind of their situation and being able to present it in a way that people will hear it. Because I feel like if you're too aggressive with advice, it could be the best advice in the world, but they're not going to hear it.
Thank you, Devin. Suzanne, and then Brad.
So I would say a mentor should be extremely good at listening, because I think when you're looking for a mentor, the person would like to speak and share what's on their mind, and then the mentor can explain to them and kind of guide them. So I definitely think that is a very strong quality they should have.
Thank you, Suzanne. Brad, and then Joe.
Thanks. I would say something like, sort of selfless advice, for lack of a better term, in the sense that, there's a lot of smart people out there that have a lot of great advice, but oftentimes it comes from a place of thinking about their own life. And so they're constantly thinking about, here's what I would do, or here's what I did, or, as opposed to a mentor fully listening and being in that space and place of the person they're mentoring, and trying to provide guidance that's appropriate for them, and not what might not have been appropriate for themselves as a mentor.
Thank you, Brad. Joe, and then John.
I hate it when you ask these questions in a group because someone takes your answer. Especially with this group, it's a sharp group, but I don't want to be repetitive, but it is listening. There is nothing that trumps that or beats that piece. I maybe add to it and say it's asking a lot of questions. Before I want to say anything, I get a clear picture of what's going on. Before I teach, I create space to have that conversation. You have to listen to do that.
Thank you, Joe. John, and then Chris.
I would say a mentor has to have a great level of discernment, just recognizing that the questions that are being asked and the advice that's being given could have a significant life-altering impact for that person. And so, the mentor is going to be there and then gone in a lot of cases. And so recognizing just how that might play out for that person in their life, whether personally or professionally.
Thank you, John. Chris, then David.
I think I would describe this as the humility to know that when someone comes to talk to you about something, you know very little about the full story of what's going on, and they probably only share with you part of the story. So having the humility of knowing, A, it's not your problem and you don't really know, but just to simply understand it's probably far more complex. And if they get there by themselves through what you described, Mark, as the coaching, that's probably, they know the rest of the story, right? So I think humility would be a good point. And
Thank
I
you.
loved all the
Oh,
other answers.
great. Thank you. David?
Yeah, thanks. I echo what Joe said, because both Devin and Suzanne took mine. So I will add love, the coming from love. So even Mark, when he stepped on your toe so hard that it still hurts, you know he was coming from love, and he was coming from the space where he was looking out for your greater good.
Thank you, David. You know, the interesting thing is that sometimes we think of mentoring as that moment where someone imparts or has imparted a piece of wisdom, a perspective, an insight, an idea that maybe changes the course of your life or my life along the way. And at times in our coaching or consulting or mentoring, or how we show up with people, whether it's a prospect, a colleague, a friend, a loved one, and we might impart a piece of wisdom, there are times, and in most cases, we will never understand the impact or the ripple effect of that pearl of wisdom. How many people since 1980 have I talked about timeliness and been a model for that pearl of wisdom? How many people over the course of time have been impacted because of what you have shared, and then have gone on to share it with others, what they have learned from you? I don't think, you know, we are in a profession where we get a sort of that first tier or that inner tier of applause or a standing ovation, or, you know, written evaluations for a presentation or a workshop, or somebody writes us an email and says, I picked up a copy of your book and I just wanted to send a note. And we get that momentary or that fleeting moment of satisfaction. But the real value comes in the extension of the wisdom, insights, strategies, stories, and ideas that not only we share with our audiences and our readers and our clients, but the ripple effect of how they share it, and those people share it, and those people continue to share it. That is the value of mentoring. Thank you for the good work that each of you are called and compelled to do on those days when it may be frustrating, or you may be tired or fatigued. Know that it matters. And Henry and I and Devin and Suzanne are here cheering you on and helping pull you over the finish line. Or as Henry would say, getting the book in hand, John, is not the finish line, it is the starting line. And so thank you for joining me today, and we will see you next week.